On the 15th of January 2025, at dawn, officers from the Northwest Regional Organised Crime Unit moved in. A quiet Warrington estate, still, empty, almost peaceful, was suddenly broken by a single command. The door slams open. Detectives sweep into an ordinary semi-detached home that, for months, was hiding anything but an ordinary life. Inside, what they find is the blueprint of a criminal empire. Stacks of vacuum-sealed cocaine, weighed and ready for distribution. Bundles of cash, wrapped tight in elastic bands. Multiple phones, each loaded with encrypted message logs. A digital ledger documenting over 800 kilograms of Class A drugs moved across the UK. And financial records tracing profits that investigators would later confirm amounted to £26 million. This wasn't a stash house. This was Central Command. Detectives move from room to room. A kitchen table turned into a counting station. A spare bedroom functioning as storage. A hallway cupboard converted into a hide for cocaine bricks. Every corner of this quiet suburban home had been repurposed into the machinery of a national supply network. For neighbors, the address had seemed unremarkable, just another home on just another street. But for investigators, this would become the center of Operation Acropolis, the takedown of one of the Northwest's most extensive drug networks in recent years. How did one man, operating from a quiet residential address, build a network that stretched from the Northwest to London, Derby, and Great Yarmouth? And more importantly, what mistake finally exposed it? If operations like this are unfolding in houses that look just like yours, and you're finding out after the raids, not before, you're already behind. Subscribe now, don't be the last one aware of what's happening in your own community. Before his name appeared in case files and courtroom documents, Jack Donegan was simply another resident living on Briars Close in Cinnamon Brow, Warrington. 29 years old. No public footprint. No reputation that stood out. To understand how a network of this scale could operate, you have to understand the region it grew from. Warrington sits at a crossroads, a link between Liverpool, Manchester, Cheshire, and the motorway routes that feed the rest of the country. For decades, this corridor has been identified by law enforcement as a key pipeline exploited by organised crime groups. Across the Northwest, police have repeatedly documented how criminal groups embed themselves in ordinary residential areas. Quiet streets, commuter estates, and working-class neighbourhoods where everyday life continues while illegal supply chains move unseen beneath it. The pressures in these areas are real. Limited opportunities. A steady trade in low-level dealing. A long-standing presence of gangs linked to Liverpool and Greater Manchester. All of it forming an environment where organised crime can take root without drawing attention. Donegan lived in the middle of that landscape, a landscape where criminal networks recruit quietly, expand silently, and blend into normality. He kept a low profile. He avoided visibility. And in streets where discretion often matters more than force, that made him useful, reliable, and eventually, significant. By the time investigators finally connected his name to a wider structure, the foundation had long been laid. Connections had been formed. Roles had been assigned. And what began as part of the background noise of the Northwest drug trade was already developing into something far more organised. By the time law enforcement discovered the full extent of the network, it was already enormous, but its beginnings were far more modest. Public records do not show exactly when or how Jack Donegan first became involved in drug distribution. The early days remain murky, lost in shadows. What investigators uncovered, however, reveals that what started small quickly grew into something far more organised. When police executed coordinated raids, they arrested multiple couriers: John Anderson, David Shelley, Nathan O'Hare, Kevin Pledger, Sean Windsor, and Ellis Nolan. These names illustrate the early, and essential, foot soldiers in what would become the network's backbone. These men weren't glamorous criminals. They were couriers, drivers, runners, and carriers who moved drugs night after night, under the radar. Their job was simple and blunt: transport the product, avoid suspicion, and deliver reliably. That reliability, trustworthiness, and silence were vital. Over time, those couriers formed a loose network of contacts. Deals made, packages exchanged, payments processed. Donegan, operating from his home base, oversaw distribution through these trusted couriers. The system was built on discretion, not violence, on logistics, not headlines. In those early phases, secrecy was paramount. Conversations were coded. Transactions are invisible. Dead drop handoffs. No elaborate hideouts. No flashy displays. Just pragmatism and quiet efficiency. That foundation, small scale, low profile, but disciplined, allowed the operation to expand. From sporadic deals to regular supply runs. From a few contacts to a linked chain of couriers stretching across the Northwest and beyond. What began as discrete transactions and low-profile courier runs soon grew into a full-scale criminal enterprise. Investigators later recovered a digital ledger from Jack Donegan's phone, documenting the supply of more than 800 kilograms of Class A drugs. The scale was staggering, and the network's reach extended far beyond Warrington. Financially, the operation was enormous. Profits exceeded £26 million, according to court records. Every transaction, every delivery, and every courier played a part in a system that had the precision of a legitimate business but operated outside the law. Key figures emerged as the operation expanded. Philip Morse acted as the group's minder, personally managing the storage, movement, and internal distribution of drugs, ensuring the network ran smoothly under Donegan's direct orders. Stephen Joel Craven is the network's financial coordinator, overseeing cash flow, payments to suppliers, and movement of money across the network to keep operations liquid and secure. John Anderson, a trusted courier, responsible for transporting drugs over long distances, adhering strictly to instructions, and maintaining confidentiality under high-risk conditions. David Shelley, another key courier who carried substantial loads across the Northwest and maintained contacts with local dealers, ensuring deliveries were executed without detection. Nathan Aher is a courier tasked with high-value shipments, including the consignment intercepted at Knutsford Services, which is critical in connecting regional supply chains to London and Derby. The network's distribution stretched across the Northwest and reached as far as London, Derby, and Great Yarmouth, supplying multiple markets with Class A substances. Late-night meetings, blind drops, and coded messages became the routine. Handovers were quick, silent, and meticulous. To any outsider, it could have seemed like an ordinary business operation, yet beneath the surface, every step carried enormous risk. A single misstep could expose hundreds of kilos, tens of thousands in cash, and the people running the operation. By the time investigators pieced together the scale, Donegan's network had become one of the largest and most organized drug operations the Northwest had seen in recent years. This was no longer small-time distribution. This was a structured, coordinated enterprise with personnel, logistics, and a financial system that rivaled legitimate businesses. And every part of it was under the control of Jack Donegan and his closest associates. By the height of the operation, Jack Donegan's network was moving hundreds of kilograms of Class A drugs across the Northwest and beyond, generating tens of millions of pounds in profits. Investigators found that the gang operated through multiple addresses spread across Cheshire, Greater Manchester, Lancashire, Merseyside, and North Wales. In total, 12 properties were searched during the coordinated raids, uncovering drugs, cash, and records that documented the scale of the operation. While public records do not detail extravagant lifestyle choices, police noted patterns typical of organized crime networks: front houses, safe houses, and dead-letter addresses used to conceal shipments and communications, allowing the network to operate quietly and efficiently. This was not chaos. This was precision. A network designed to maximize profit, minimize exposure, and maintain control across dozens of locations, while hundreds of kilos of Class A drugs were moved unseen. Criminal networks don't wait, and neither should you. Subscribe now so you stay ahead of the stories that shape the world outside your window. The first cracks in Jack Donegan's operation appeared as the Northwest Regional Organised Crime Unit intensified its investigation. They deployed a combination of surveillance, intelligence gathering, wiretaps, and cross-regional coordination, gradually building a picture of the network's scale and structure. A critical breakthrough came on the 30th of May 2024, when Nathan Aher was arrested at Knutsford Services. Officers discovered 12 kilograms of cocaine hidden in a blue box, a shipment that would later form a central piece of evidence linking Donegan to nationwide supply operations. The investigation soon uncovered a digital ledger on Donegan's phone, detailing the movement of hundreds of kilos of Class A drugs and recording profits in the millions. This ledger provided investigators with the smoking gun, irrefutable evidence of the scale and organization of the operation. Intercepted messages revealed a level of overconfidence. One communication from Donegan to his partner, Saskia Stewart, boasted of profits and monthly earnings averaging £15,000, a message that would later expose key links in the network. On the morning of the 15th of January 2025, officers from the Northwest Regional Organised Crime Unit executed a series of 12 coordinated search warrants across Cheshire, Greater Manchester, Lancashire, Merseyside, and North Wales. The raids were swift and meticulous. Law enforcement moved through multiple properties, uncovering the inner workings of a criminal network that had quietly operated for years. Among those arrested was Jack Donegan, the orchestrator of the enterprise, along with key associates including Philip Morse, Stephen Joel Craven, and several couriers whose names were central to the operation. Officers recovered substantial evidence. In one property alone, approximately £130,000 in cash was seized. Across the other locations, additional cash and controlled substances were recovered, along with records, phones, and digital ledgers documenting hundreds of kilos of Class A drugs previously distributed. These items provided a clear map of the network's scale and operations. In the months that followed, the legal process moved swiftly. At Preston Crown Court, all 8 defendants, including Donegan, Morse, and Joel Craven, pleaded guilty to conspiracy and organised crime charges, accepting responsibility for their roles in the extensive supply network. The empire that had operated quietly across multiple counties was dismantled in a matter of hours. Evidence, confessions, and careful police work ensured that the full scale of the operation could finally be brought into the light. On the 5th of December 2025, justice was delivered at Preston Crown Court. The court handed down sentences to the key figures of Operation Acropolis. Jack Donegan, ringleader and organizer of the nationwide drug network, sentenced to 15 years. Philip Morse, trusted minder responsible for storing and distributing drugs under Donegan's instructions, sentenced to 12 years. Stephen Joel Craven, a financial manager overseeing cash flow and movement of payments, sentenced to 8 years and 8 months. Kevin Gaskell, a courier involved in regional drug distribution, sentenced to 10 years. Keith Rowlands, a courier responsible for transporting drugs between safe houses and delivery points, was sentenced to 9 years and 6 months. Daniel Stewart YK, a member involved in the supply and logistics of Class A distribution, sentenced to 6 years. Robert Howarth, a courier facilitating high-value deliveries across the network, sentenced to 8 years. Saskia Stewart, participant in the activities of the Organised Crime Group, assisting with coordination, received a suspended sentence of 18 months for 2 years. 8 additional defendants remain to be sentenced, with hearings scheduled for February following the December verdict. The impact of the operation was significant. Investigators seized hundreds of kilograms of Class A drugs before they could reach communities and blocked tens of millions of pounds in criminal profit. The dismantling of Donegan's network removed one of the most organised and extensive drug operations in recent Northwest history. A lead investigator reflected that the case marked one of the most significant OCG disruptions in the region, highlighting the effectiveness of coordinated surveillance, intelligence gathering, and law enforcement collaboration. Operation Acropolis proved that even the most extensive criminal networks can be disrupted, that meticulous policing and community vigilance can stop drugs from reaching the streets, and that the cost of crime is always high for those involved and for the communities they exploit. Jack Donegan called himself a businessman. He operated quietly, confident that the network he had built across the Northwest was untouchable. But the evidence. The ledger detailing hundreds of kilos of Class A drugs and millions in profits, and a single reckless message changed everything. How many more operations like this go unnoticed? How many more businessmen are quietly running organized crime networks from behind ordinary doors, while communities remain unaware? If you don't want to miss any stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Every story counts, and staying informed can make all the difference.